What's going on, movie fans? My name is Michael Weir. I love talking about movies, and today we continue on the Saw franchise review series as we get closer to Saw X releasing at the end of September, and today we're talking about Saw 6. This is a movie that previously, prior to rewatching, I should say, I thought, well, it's good connective tissue between 5 and 7, but it doesn't really stand out. I don't know why I had that opinion, because on rewatch yesterday, I loved this movie. There was so much to enjoy about this movie. They do some interesting things with the characters in this movie that previous Saw movies hadn't done yet. We'll get to those things in the review, but I just wanted to let you guys know that previously, I didn't think very highly of this movie, and now, this is one of my favorites. So let's do the review for Saw 6.
If it's Halloween, it must be Saw.
You will be put to the test.
Saw 6.
And so, guys, Saw 6 is directed by Kevin Grutert, and he directed 2 of the Saw franchise movies. We will get to the other one next time. But in this movie, Saw 6, you, of course, have the return of all of the previous characters that you needed to see in these movies or that haven't been killed off yet. And some that have been killed off yet, because that's what these movies do well. They find a way to get rid of a character, but then still find a way to kind of tie them into the future storylines, which I've really enjoyed about this franchise. And I know a lot of people complain, they're like, Jigsaw couldn't have predicted and planned this, and this. I get what you're saying, but in the context of the movie, what he does, they show how he set this game up before he died. So Saw 6 is still in the realm of possibility for the Jigsaw Killer to have set up. But let's get into the synopsis of this film. This film does something different, in my opinion, where it takes the victims of the Saw games and it really makes you root for the game itself or for Jigsaw, because the victims this time around are not good people. Like, the movie opens on that note and you're like, oh, I'm sensing something different there. It opens with 2 people who have to give a pound of their flesh because they have screwed so many people out of their money, out of their lives. Like, they have ruined people's lives. And so they have to give a pound of flesh. And so one girl cuts her arm off to win the game, where another guy tries to cut fat out of himself to win the game. And so while you're watching this horrific trap go down, you're kind of like, yeah, you guys kind of deserve it. And that's the first time, in my opinion, that these movies have had that happen, because previously they targeted cops for, like, trying to save Saw victims, or they targeted a doctor because he cheated on his wife. Like, okay, that's bad, but cut your leg off bad? Like, that's a little extreme. Or they targeted junkies, and it was like, well, why? I mean, she already has a bad life. You don't have to put her in a Saw trap. So while I understood what was going on in those games, you used to root for all of them. But in this movie specifically, you do not root for any of the people. And I like that. Like, it flips the victim card on its head in this movie. And that's really cool, because from the jump, from that first scene, that's what happens. But again, getting into the synopsis of this movie, you've got this insurance guy who scams people out of their insurance when they need it the most. And one of the people that he scammed in the past was John Kramer, aka the Jigsaw Killer. And you'd be guaranteed that when he was putting these games together, he thought about that. Like, nah, remember when I needed cancer treatment? I'm going to get this guy. I'm going to find a way to work it in. So it almost feels like revenge for Jigsaw, but you understand, because you see those flashback scenes where they're good friends, there's no issues, he's a paying customer, and then when he needs the coverage that he needs for his cancer treatments, they deny him. They go, with your age, we can't approve that. And he's like, yeah, of course you can approve it. And they're like, no, we're not going to take the risk on you. We're not going to approve it. And so when this guy gets put into a game, and this guy's watchdog team gets put into a game, and different people from his life get put into a game, you're like, you know what? I'm good with this. This is fine. You deserve everything that you're getting, because the healthcare system is so screwed up that you understand, like, as a regular citizen, you understand, like, hey, get these motherfuckers. And so that's what it feels like in this movie. So for the first time ever, you're kind of rooting for the game. You're not rooting for the victim. And that's cool to me. While all of that is going on with the insurance salesman, he's going through this game, trying to learn a lesson. You also have, on the other side of things, Detective Hoffman and the other FBI agents who are getting closer to figuring out who is the Jigsaw Killer. Now, of course, at this point, shouldn't be a spoiler, but Detective Hoffman is the Jigsaw Killer. He is the one who's carrying on Jigsaw's legacy, playing out this final game in Saw 6. And so you have the FBI closing in on him. He kind of is feeling that pressure. And you have the wife of Jigsaw, who is playing a game of her own with instructions from the deceased John Kramer. So you're seeing all of these pieces sort of merge together. But all of that said leads me to my likes, because my first like for this movie is going to be how this movie really pulls all of the previous plot lines together, and it really does feel like you're getting a final showdown here. You've got the FBI closing in on Hoffman, you've got Jigsaw's wife playing her game, and then you've got this insurance guy game going on, and all of it really ties to the past. Like, one of my gripes in previous movies is that, you get so many flashback scenes and they don't all necessarily matter. However, I feel like the flashback scenes in this movie make the movie better. They fill in the gaps for the viewer, and so it's really enjoyable to watch those flashback scenes because you're now understanding why Jigsaw built these traps or played these games the way that he did. And so my first like for this movie is just how it pulls together those previous movies in a really nice bow. I already talked about this once, but I'll just touch on it one more time. I really like how this movie makes you root for the games or the traps. And I know I kind of talked about that, so I'll just throw that in as a quick like, but I feel like that's very important to me. Like, my viewing of this movie is different than all of the previous 5 movies. And for a franchise to do that 6 movies in, that's huge to me. And I feel like that's something they do going forward in these movies. Like, they're like, oh, the audience liked that, so we're going to do that going forward. But I'm not 100% sure, and that's something I'll look at when I'm watching the next couple of movies over the next couple of days. But I really liked how you root for the traps. You don't like this guy. He's the first time in a Saw movie where I'm like, I don't want to root for this guy. I hope this guy loses. Because even the guy who was a drunk driver, who got put in the rack, like, you feel for him. You're like, that's a horrible way to die. And he already served his prison sentence, and he already feels guilt. He already feels remorse. And now he's in this Jigsaw trap. Like, he did something horrible. He did a hit and run. But, like, does he deserve the rack? But you get this insurance guy in there, and you're like, no, this guy is a scumbag. Like I said, it's just cool that 6 movies in, they were able to sort of change your perception about the people being put in these games or in these traps. And finally, my last like for the movie is going to be a Billy the Puppet moment that I think is so good. So you've got the Billy the Puppet doll, or puppet, whatever you want to call it, and it's been on a bicycle before, and it's been on the TV screen talking a lot. But I don't think we've ever seen this thing talk in person before. And so as he walks up to one of the traps where these 2 people have barbed wire around their necks and they're being sort of hung by the barbed wire, like barely on a platform, Billy the Puppet falls from a noose made of barbed wire, and he talks like it's a robot animatronic thing. So to be clear, it's not like he talks. It's not, if you haven't seen, it's not like this weird, like, now Billy the Puppet is sentient. Like, it's not like that. You have this Billy the Puppet doll that falls and then robotically talks, but I don't think we've ever seen anyone get introduced to a game like that before, and it was just a really cool moment for me. Like, I really like how they're able to bring Billy the Puppet up another level 6 movies into the franchise. Like, he's an iconic piece of this franchise. You need Billy the Puppet. You absolutely do. But we've seen him on TV before. We've seen him on a bike before. But what haven't we seen just right there in the game? Like he falls from the roof and he's sitting there hung up by a noose and he talks to him. It's just a really cool way to introduce that game. I thought it was done really well. And so, yeah, Billy the Puppet on a wire, something we hadn't seen before. Wanted to point it out. Now, if we're getting to my only real dislike for this movie, guys, it is that this movie, much like Saw 5, feels like you have to have watched all of the previous movies to really get enjoyment out of this movie. Like, you could pop this in and watch it maybe a little better than you could 5, because 5 had so many other storylines going on, whereas this movie's pretty straightforward and the flashbacks do fill you in. But this movie, again, feels like you really have to be invested in the franchise. It's something that Scream, one of my favorite slashers of all time, that franchise has done well. Like, I feel like you could pop in any of the Scream movies and just go and not have an issue catching up or what's going on with them. However, in the Saw franchise, as much as I love this franchise, if you just popped in Saw 6 and you've never seen any of the previous ones, you'd be completely lost. It's something that these movies have done poorly over time. Like, every time I watch a Saw movie after Saw 3, I'm like, I'm glad that I watched those previous movies, because I'd be completely lost. And this movie feels like it, just like it did in 5, just like it did in 4. There's so many moving pieces at this point. And while 6 does a good job of pulling those pieces together, it still feels like a movie that does not stand on its own, and that's a dislike for me. Overall, I'll say that I think Saw 6 is an enjoyable time, and it's a movie that I really enjoyed this time around. Like, a couple times watching this franchise now, and I'm finally sitting sitting down to review it, and I was like, wow, this movie really is a cut above some of the other movies. Like, the fact that they were able to get you to root against the victims for the first time makes the series feel fresh. And there's just good things about this movie that I think I didn't notice before, but I'm definitely noticing now. With all that said, though, guys, those are my thoughts, and that's my review for Saw 6. Have you seen Saw 6? If you have, let me know in the comment section down below, and let me know your thoughts of this movie. Let me know if you agree or disagree with me, because I love hearing from you guys. Finally, if you guys like this video and you want to see more, don't forget to hit that like button, because it helps the video, it helps the channel, and it helps me right here. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Alright guys, we get to the end of the Saw 6 review, and there are some great traps in this movie. There really are, and there are some really well done traps. I like the games that were played in this movie, especially the breathing trap. That trap almost got me to make it my favorite trap in this movie, because I liked how you had to hold your breath. Like, as a viewer, you're sitting there holding your breath with them. It was really well done. However, the best trap in this movie by far, and one of the better traps in the franchise, in my opinion, is going to be that carousel trap. That shotgun just bringing people around, because there's so much in that moment. All 6 of these people worked for that insurance agent, and he's standing there and he only gets to let 2 of them live, and he chooses 2 of the people, but the people are begging and pleading. But when he finally comes down to that last 2 people, that one gets to live, one gets to die, and he chooses one to live, the other one just starts going off on him, and you could tell that he never really liked his boss, and he's so upset that he's been chosen to die now. It's just a good moment, because that insurance salesman was like, oh, I don't choose if people live and die, you know, I just choose if they live and die on paper. I don't choose if they live and die, you know, that's not on me. And so when you get to this point in the movie where he's got to actually choose which of the 6 people that he's been so close with over these years die and which ones live, it's just a good trap. Psychologically, it's a good trap, but also just, it's violent. Like that carousel spinning and spinning, and they get stuck on that shotgun and it goes off. It's just a great trap. So the carousel trap is my favorite trap in Saw 6, and again, one of the better ones in the franchise. But guys, if you like this review and you want to check out more, you can click right there to check out any of my Saw reviews. We should be at 6 at this point. And guys, if you want to check out any of my other reviews, I've got all my 2023 reviews right there.